Hi, welcome to another edition of a book I've read, which I think is great. So another book that I found quite interesting. I read this book, Faith and Courage, by Thabo.The. So he is the Archbishop of the Anglican Church. Anglican Church is a branch of the Church of England, but not specifically you would call it that because it's amongst equals, the Church among equals, but he's the Archbishop of Southern Africa. And yeah, there's a brief, I think, bibliography about him towards the end of the book. Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town, so that includes, I think, Swaziland, the Southern Africa specifically. And so in this book, it's just about his personal journey, okay, and his personal journey with praying for Mandela. So in specifics of how he came about to the role and how he came out of the role. So he came about of the role, came. So the book is very personal. So it's his personal story, and it's about me. It's about himself, and what he has gone through, and to be who he is. So now, so I had this book since 2018. I took it out of a friend's bookshelf. I was like, I want to read this, and the book was it wasn't a gift. I literally, I was like, this looks nice, can I take it? And so it's 2018 and now it's 2022 and I finally finished reading the book, friend. So the book really is very riveting and very encouraging to see. So it's a personal book. So he personalizes his story of how he experienced apartheid and how he experienced praying for Mandela and how he experienced for Mandela and his family. So it's a personal book. It's not, he's not trying to magnify himself as I don't know, a god or like a deity. He's literally personalizing and saying, me as a human being, this is how I experienced Mandela and this is how I experienced apartheid. So let's just start at the very beginning. So the book, I'll just start at the content page, which actually I have never read. So he looks at his family history, how they experienced apartheid as the Mahobe cloth, as a Mahobe tribe. I think his tribe's name is Mahobea. They have a praise poem and he recites the praise poem. So Black South Africans and I think Southern Africans have a praise name. So it's he's part of the Bedi clan. So it's very poignant history that he talks about and how the land was lost in his case. And so that's a very interesting perspective and how he has had to come to terms with how the land was lost and how restitution and land restitution has not really worked out in his case, and there's a continuing conflict about it. So that's a beginning of his story, and I think that's great. Then he talks about, and he has a very lively history himself personally. So he grew up on the streets of Alexandra and Soweto in combination. So he's a city kid, so he grew up in Joburg, and his relationship with other parts of so he grew up in Joburg, but his family is from Limpopo, and he speaks about his dad being a ZCC leader, one of the founding leaders of the Zionist Church of Christ, and how he chose to be an Anglican. And so it's a personal journey about how he became to that. And then he talks about his politics, his time as a youth politician and his time as a member of ANC and what that meant in apartheid. That's kind of great. Then he talks about his hardship in early marriage and his married life and how he took upon himself different roles and how he went to theology school instead of fulfilling a desire to be in the sciences, and the hard choice that he had to make during that time. So it's a very personal, I was like, everyone should write a book about themselves. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and his relationship with the Mandela family, and specifically Grosha Michelle, who he was called to pray for Mandela. So yeah, so that's the first part of the book. So I get all like, here's my story. This is how I survived apartheid. This is how you can survive apartheid. And so and how you can burn it through into the next thought. So I found that very interesting, and yeah, okay. Then the second part of the story is about his introduction to Mandela and praying for Mandela. So he met Mandela in his later years. So after he had retired from being president, so he had seen him like everyone else on the glance of, oh, okay, you president of South Africa, you struggled through, but now it was a personal come have supper with my family, pray for you, hear prayers, and more importantly, he shares a story about how he spent one Christmas at Ngunu with Nelson Mandela, and how Nelson Mandela was so welcoming and so personal towards him, and how he made him think about himself as just umundu. English word is just a person, like umundu, just like any person. And so in his praying, he acknowledges that Mandela taught him about himself and his personal prayers, and he also looks at how in retirement Mandela was engaged with the new government, that not new government, but like the government that followed him. And so he speaks about Zuma and corruption, and he speaks about what happened post the death of Nelson Mandela, and so he gives a light of, this is what Mandela would have hoped for, and what people must try and work towards. So it's his personal opinion about the whole thing. He's not trying to tell people how to live their lives like other people, it's not just letting people know. And so one of the things that I loved is how he recollects different authors and how they saw the faith of Mandela. So like for example, one of the things that Mandela says about religion is like there's direct quotes, and he shows quotes, and there's referencing. I love the referencing. So there's different references and how he goes back to what he experienced as a archbishop, and as just being a member of the church. I provide a little pictorial manner, 2 pictures of him, and it's a very good, enlightening story about a very strong leader who leads not only his congregation, but those who seek understanding of God and what God meant. So wait, I want to go to this page that I really liked. Sorry, I just finished the book, and I decided, let me just do this quickly before I forget. Yeah, he calls them the quietening years. So he talks about Mandela specifically on the quietening years. Then he also references different people. So yeah, this is what I like. So there's a book called Debating the ANC's. What is the name? The book is called The Spirit of Freedom: South African Leaders on Religion and Politics. So one of the quotes that Mandela says in this book is the relationship between a person and his or God is deeply intimate and a private matter. That is not a matter usually regarded as open for public discussion. There is a sense in which for me it is a matter beyond articulation. It's an experience I do not fully comprehend. So this is Mandela's view on religion. And so guys, I'm not Betty, so I forgive myself. So Mahoba speaks about So I normally call him Archbishop Thabo, so I don't know, but Mahoba is he speaks about how Mandela experiences religion. So it's like a whole chapter on that, a reference of that. Then the insight where he speaks specifically about himself, he speaks about the fact that about the value of Mandela, how he lived, prepared to die, recognize the reality that left to itself, humanity is capable of wiping itself off the face of the earth. So he talks about the realities of how Mandela wanted to how Mandela wanted people to assess the impact of colonial disposition on themselves. Okay, so he talks about himself. The whole book is a personal. So in a sense, he talks about how everyone should take it upon themselves to think about how apartheid impacted them. And there's the quote I wanted to say: the need to talk about the abysses of our history, not to pull anyone down or stoke conflict, but to say they must be pierced, because just naming the facts brings catharsis. So really, it's the poignant point of this book is to say, just naming the facts. So apartheid, there are facts, and the fact is, each person who lived during apartheid has a story to tell, and this is his story, and how meeting Mandela added to his story, and how praying for Mandela rebuilt the energy he needed to be who he is now, and what he is doing. And so that's been the most interesting part, that he actually talks about the impact of it, and like how he addresses it, how he's addressed the impact of Mandela in his speeches, how he's addressed it in his life. So let's talk about faith, hope, love, and it's a great book. So I would highly recommend, if you are interested in South African history, if you are a composer of thoughts around South African history, if you're a conscious thinker, you read this book. The downside of it, what's the downside of this book? Oh, I need to be honest. I think it would be nice to read more books like this. The downside is just it's him, ne? One person is not enough. So the downside is that we can't only have one story, which is so important. There are so many other stories. And he also talks about that, about how everyone... I like what he says, sorry. This is the last thing, and then I think I'm finished with this review of this book. He talks about... I should have done prep work. Because I finished the book and then I came here. I really enjoyed this part. He talks about whiteness, and whiteness in its silence undermines the freedom. So he says, it's his own opinions, and I think that's what makes it a truly good book to read. I'm concerned that except for white clerics in churches, white leaders, particularly in business, have lost the confidence to speak their minds and criticize. They have been made to feel excessively guilty and scared, and if they are second-class citizens in South Africa, and they recoiled into a fear reminiscent of the apartheid years. So really, is like, okay, here's the thing I can touch on the fact that what I've observed over the years is that white business people have really kept quiet about what they've considered either corruption, or what they've considered either ill treatment of indigenous people. Also, he's trying to express that it's that our future lies in the ability for both white and black citizens to be critical and vocal, and to work alongside the poor and speak boldly to power. So he's oh, critique, yes, finally. It's airy fairy, it's aspirational and it's hopeful, and in the reality of the situation, these people are reading his book. It's just his thoughts on everything. So there's my take on Faith and Courage, Praying with Mandela by Thabo Makgoba. Hope I said it correctly, and I'm okay to be corrected. So it's a read. It's you should read it if you're interested in history, and you should make your mom read it. So okay, cool.